All right. So, welcome to today morning's orientation. Sorry that we started with a bit of a delay. There are still people joining in, and I just wanted to make sure all of us are there together so that we don't need to go through things over and over again. Um, so, firstly, we are here to discuss the beginners classes that are scheduled on Saturdays and Wednesdays. Saturdays, the timings are between I think 6 to 7:15, and Wednesdays between 6:30 to 7:45, right? So now, before we start, I'll just give a general introduction for those who are actually a part of the main team here. So I'm Gayatri Ramesh, and I will be teaching your classes. I'm the founder director of Iyengar Yoga Deepam, and I've been blessed to have studied directly with Guruji. So the main purpose of these classes is for me to be able to disseminate Iyengar Yoga in as original, as undiluted way as possible to get Guruji's message across to the best extent I know. Uh, Now, along with me here are two other teachers and the main admin person. I'll start with the main admin person. Um, so this is Mr. Vaidyanathan, and Mr. Vaidyanathan is the main administrative person of IYD. And the reason you'll need to know him the most is because he will be handling all your administrative queries, whatever is non-direct class content related, as in when you're not feeling well or you don't understand something that was discussed during class. At that time, you'll come to your instructor. But anything else, when the classes, what the class timings are, about your attendance, about any fee related problems, anything as far as the smooth running of the class is concerned, that is outside the content of the class, it is Mr. Vaidyanathan that you will have to go to. He handles everything outside the main teaching in the class. Now, the next person that I would like you to introduce you to is one minute. This is Niran Victor and Nirmal Prabhu. So he has been a part of Iyengar Yoga Deepam, and he's been studying with me for a while now. He's been completely groomed by me. So when we teach classes together, usually our teaching styles would echo each other and our content would be seamless. So there are classes, these classes will be taught by a combination of me, Niran, and Parimala Parthasarathy. I'm not sure if Parimala Parthasarathy is there currently logged in. And so when she shows up, I'll make an introduction. But these are your co-teachers, Mrs. Parimala Parthasarathy, Niran, Nirmal, and Vaidyanathan. Yeah. So now I will proceed to the main discussion for today.
Sorry, I have a question. Did you say Mr. Vaidyanathan is also a teacher?
No, he's not a teacher. Sorry, he's the admin team, Niran and Parimala, Mrs. Parimala Parthasarathy, and me. We will be the main teachers. Niran Vaidyanathan will handle all the admin related queries. Okay. So firstly, we'll discuss as to why, that is what the main reason for the beginners class is. That is why we segregated into various levels. Actually, as far as one's practice is concerned, there is nothing called a level when it comes to yoga. You start a practice and it's a journey that you continuously go through. But the beginners section, according to me, is the most important part of anybody's training, because that's where we are trying to give you a foundation that is as strong as possible. That is the basic skeletal framework, the basic alphabets of one's practice is sketched out and actually sculpted in the beginners session. By sculpted, I mean that when you sculpt something, it's got to be sculpted right. The strokes that you add to it has to happen right, and that foundation is what carries you through a practice that is very mature and highly personalized. And why I'm using the second term is, when it comes to yoga, there is a common understanding that hatha yoga is a physical subject with a high degree of physicality. Now, when it comes to Iyengar yoga, yes, there's a very in-depth, a very intense practice of asana, and a very intense or a very in-depth practice of pranayama as well. But I think the beauty of Guruji's system, of Sri B.K. Iyengar's approach, is he actualizes, that is, makes every single word of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras very realizable. And I think when you undertake the journey, for me, it's been 20 years now. Probably in the first couple of years, I would not have known how to apply, not couple of years, even more, for maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I would not have known how to actualize or realize or put into context Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. So for me, it would be a practice, and then it would be looking at a theory book. But in Guruji's system, he has actually been able to make you realize, that is, at every part, it is a very deeply penetrative practice. It's really not about looking at a physical concept of asanas. It's much more than that. So I'll give you an example. So in the beginner's class, it will be gross adjustment. Now, all of you know Adho Mukha Svanasana. Adho Mukha Svanasana, or downward dog, is a very popular pose. It's like an inverted V, the diagram of the pose is like an inverted V. So initially, the pose or the actions that we're teaching is about the gross realization of the structure of the pose. That is, how are your hands, legs, feet, hip, thighs, knees going to be assembled in order to recreate the structure, that is the skeletal framework of the pose. But then once I move away from that point as to how your hands need to be, how your thighs need to be. Now, the reason I'm starting out with hands and thighs is when I say your hands, everybody knows where it is. When I say your thighs, everybody knows where it is. So it's not a very confusing approach. If I say press your hands and push your hips back, both these instructions you're able to understand. Sorry. So, but when the next, so when we are going to the next, sorry, my voice is cracking a little bit. So when we're going to the next session, so when I say press your hands, and you're going to be moving your hip back in a way that the floating rib is going to be extended, or the intercostal muscles are going to be extended. Now, this is not an extremely physical, or it's not something that is so gross. We are moving to a slightly deeper aspect where your mind is immediately thinking, oh, where is that floating rib? Or she talked about the diaphragm. What does the diaphragm mean? So this is not really completely from a physical point of view. Here you're immediately starting to use your mind to pull in that action. And so it is a little more penetrative. That is, when I say diaphragm or when I say intercostal muscles, you're really looking beyond just those legs and hips or thighs, and you're going to a little more search to make the asana or the search of an asana a little deeper. So this is what I mean by penetration. Now, next, when I say, suppose I add this more and I say, I'm not talking about the outer wall of the body. I'm talking about the inner. For example, when I say the sternum, I'm not talking about the outer sternum. When I'm talking about the inner sternum, then here again, you're making an attempt to look a little more within, to make a search that is not really on the outside peripheral, but we are going a little more within. So this is the way an instructor will actually guide you to kind of penetrate an asana a little more and a little more constantly. Now, this doesn't happen instantly. It happens over time. And therefore, the mode of practice, as you go a little deeper, you'll realize a lot of these tenets that Patanjali talked about becomes very practicable. In fact, I would like us to go through a process. Guruji would like us to go through a process where your practice makes you realize the quantum of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras itself. And so the practice here moves from gross to subtle, and it's very penetrative. In this, it is very organized as well. It is not about going to a pose and really realizing or trying to do the pose for the pose's sake. Rather, you will be chaining a sequence of action which allows you to understand the ripeness or the intelligence of a particular action, how the energy of the body works. When I say your right arm is functioning, your left arm is not functioning, your right hip is dull, your left hip is extending more, you're actually trying to tweak the energy system in order to make that area which is overworking balanced, that area which is underworking or not participating to participate more. So it is a very nuanced, it is quite an in-depth practice, and it is my hope that as we proceed from class to class, we realize this more and more. So here again, I'm coming to the next point, class to class. Now, what happens when one class will be directly chained to what happens the next class. So in today's class, let's say I come in and I see that overall for the group of people. Usually a teacher would be able to see this, that usually the alignment or the length of the spine for a person or their hunch is a little more. So in this class, if I observe this, then I'll pull this into the next class. So the next class will be a direct result of what we've observed this class. So the interlinking between class to class is very meaningful here, due to which, see, actually, once you've attended a class and you've been to 3 or 4 classes, there'll be a lot of chaining within a class. That is, within a class to actually get to what we've been trying to make you realize in that class, and also between classes to actually take you through that journey. So once there is a break in journey, let's say you haven't been able to attend 2 classes in a row, then it really becomes a little difficult to pick up. So in that way, attendance is very important. We're really trying to tell you, chain together class to class, so that every class adds a little more meaning to the previous class, little more depth to your own practice. Now, by saying your own practice, the way in which I would need to execute an asana for myself would be very different from the way you would need to do it for you. That is, in my case, let's say that I've had back pain, and it's not really only about the therapy angle. I'll be coming to that little later. But for me, let's say that I have a particular way by which when I go into an asana, I'm always sinking my lower back. Then the way I'll be approaching the asana will be very different from a person who has an aspect of actually overthrowing or extending or overworking their lower back. It actually comes from 2 diametrically different opposite angles. Let's say I have a stiff lower back versus a person who's over flexible, then you will be approaching the same asana in 2 different formats. By that I'm saying the asana has a particular structure. How an individual adapts so that the structure of the asana is accomplished in a way that the juice of the asana or the essence of the asana becomes applicable to a person varies a lot. So what I'll need to do to understand the essence of practice and what you will need to do to understand the essence of practice is very different. Now for this, again, Guruji has developed a method by which props become very important. Now, actually, people say Iyengar Yoga is a prop-related practice, but it is a prop-related or a prop-based practice for a reason. We have various props, bolsters, blankets, and we've been suggested a standard prop kit. Now, the reason is usually the props have 3 main functions here. One is to let's say a person is unwell, then you'll use a prop as a supportive practice. I'm not able to bend forward too much. And when I bend forward, I really cramp my spine. So I'll use 2 blocks to place my hand wherein I can extend my spine again. That is a supportive practice where a prop is used to give you support and adds purpose to your practice. Let's say a person says, I'm feeling really fatigued today. Then I use a bolster to rest on. When I use a bolster to rest on, then I'm able to give my chest a plentiful opening. Now this helps you recover. So here the prop is now used as a supportive practice. The second one is to really give you an exploration, to give you the essence of the pose. I realize that when I'm doing a practice, my lower spine is shortening. Then I use a rope to traction my lower spine. In that way, I'm gaining length. So for me, it is a highly personalized practice. It adds essence and it adds purpose to my practice. Now, if I continue to do 100 asanas or 100 different days of a practice, ignoring the fact that my spine is shortening, if I continue to do that, then what essentially happens is it evolves into a wrong practice. So there, a prop actually acts as a teacher. It helps you give you that realization that something is going wrong. So a prop is used very strategically to make sure that that wrongness is addressed and immediately corrected. So there are these 2 main aspects, that is correction, that is enhancing a pose, supportive when you're not well or when you need support, a prop is used as a support. Third is actually being able to extract the essence of the pose, and that is the most important usage of a prop. It is the most important usage of the prop. How the asana needs to be, and how a prop is constantly educating you to build into that asana, to build into that practice. So here, when we say a prop kit, it is a teacher as much as an instructor or a person is. It is very important to have a prop kit. Okay. uh, then some of you have come into this orientation after watching the Doordarshan program. Okay, some of you have come in. In fact, most of the inquiries have come in after watching the Doordarshan program. Now, the Doordarshan program or the Yogdeep series was a very successful series. Nevertheless, when we talk about yoga on broad media, there is only so much we can give. So, what was essentially taught there is the basics of how to do a pose. And you can see right there that we look at many points. It is still detailed. So we look at how to do a pose and then how to adjust it in case you're facing some hiccups. But that is still about a pose and the hiccups within that pose. Now, when we look at an individual's practice, then in a class, each one of you will be guided. Of course, this happens more as we fine tune. Each one of you, so let's say I'll say, hey, Niran, you're underdoing your shoulder blades or your shoulder blade is popping out. Make sure you place your hand on this brick and extend or pull in your shoulder blade that way so that you have a proper approach and therefore the pose is in harmony. I may call somebody else, say, Parimla, your knee is turning out. Use a belt, pull your knee in this way so that your knee is medially arranged. So it's a very highly individual practice. Now, this is what a live class is opening or an interactive class is hoping to give you. It is not really a one-way path where I'm saying or telling you what to do. It is also an interactive mechanism of seeing how I can guide you better based on your responses. So it's a very dual aspect. So you need to have a good audio video system. You need to have a communication with your teacher, and you need to be very present class to class, class after class. Now, let me go to these two. Audio video system. Now, I need to be able to see you in the best manner possible. So for which, when we are doing different asanas, so if you're lying down flat on the ground versus when you're standing tall up with your hands up, a camera needs to be able to accommodate both views. And therefore, you need to come in a little ahead of time in class and basically set up the various levels at which your camera needs to be placed. So you need to see where your camera needs to be, when it needs to be at ground level, where your camera needs to be, when you are actually at full length. So this is something you'll need to do ahead of time. Now, the second thing is communication with your teacher. Many times what happens is we actually, as I told you, last class or the previous class, if I see that this class is really struggling with the mobility of the shoulders, or they're not able to kind of apply it into an asana, then the next class, I will sequence in a way that the shoulder needs to be mobilized. So you're able to realize the various textures, the various granulations, the various fibers by which the shoulder needs to be operated. So if that is the class that I'm sequencing the next time, and let's say you have slept wrong, and let's say your neck is paining or shoulder is paining. Okay, if you come into class and then tell me that, by that time I've already sequenced for class. I've already decided what I'm going to be doing for the class. So there, you will be in a position where you come into class and you realize you're really not able to do it because you've had an issue, you're really not able to do it. So there, in order to make the class applicable for you, you need to communicate well ahead of time before class. If something is not working for you, let's say if you've had a stomach bloat, and this is a class where I've planned twists. Twists can be very destructive for a stomach bloat. If you're a person with if you're a person with IBS, then a twist class can be very destructive for you during an active phase. So you have to make sure that in order for a class to be suitable for you, if you have any condition, you have to make sure that you come or contact a teacher ahead of class and tell them that this is what you're going through. And then your teacher will tell you, okay, so point noted, I will tell you what to do in a class. So It will not happen if you come to class and then tell us something is going wrong, because by that time we are already in class mode and we have already decided what we want to adjust individually. So I'm seeing a few names. So if there is a Swaminathan, and if there is a Manav, and there is a Deepa, and there is a Radhika in class, and I already know each one of your histories. So I come into class saying that Swaminathan needs this adjustment, Radhika needs this adjustment, Deepika needs adjustment. But I'm not factoring the fact that you're unwell today in some way or the other. So that needs to be told much ahead of class so that I'm factoring that in as well. That is a very important thing, because it always happens for us teachers where we come into class and then when I'm suddenly saying, okay, all of you go into an inversion, some student pops up and says, ma'am, I can't do an inversion today because I'm on a menstrual cycle. But the fact is, you should not have done much of the class itself if you're in a menstrual cycle. So you need to be telling all of this for us well ahead of a class. Yeah. So that ultimately, when a class happens, we are hoping that we are giving you a solid takeaway from that class. And that takeaway can happen only if we wholly know your current position. So always make sure that before enrolling for the class, your case history as to what your inherent problems are. Let's say you fell off a tree maybe 10 years back and you hurt your tailbone. You need to tell us that. Let's say many years back, you've had a slip disc, but you don't have symptoms now. You need to tell us back. So very many times during class, these issues will come up, and then it becomes the job of a teacher to correct it. We can address it wholly if we know it ahead of time. So these are the main things that I think I wanted to tell you today. Being present class after class. The other thing is, when a class is scheduled to start at 6, it starts at 6. Okay. And that is 100%. When we start at 6, we start at 6. And in my case, usually we start with a prayer. Yeah. And then after we start with a prayer, which is an invocation to Patanjali, and then we move through the class. But in my case, usually right at the start of the class, I will tell you what I'm going to be doing for today's class. So we can start our prayer with our hand in front of our chest with the chest up. Some days we may start the prayer with the sacrum in and the chest up. So when we are starting class, I will tell you I'll give you a clue as to what the class, what is going to be taught in class. So the class does not start after prayer. The class starts during prayer, and prayer starts bang on time. So usually when a person enters late and says that I've not had, my internet connection was poor, or Zoom was giving me a problem. Now Zoom is very new for all of us, including me. So it is advised that you please come in 15 minutes ahead of time, figure out what is happening with your technical side. And so all of us are able to progress through class in a seamless and undisturbed manner. So as far as the orientation today, I wanted to tell you that Iyengar Yoga is a very structured, a very personalized, a very rich practice. And I will be trying to take you through this as much as I can, as much as I know. And so will our team of teachers. You need to know Mr. Vaidyanathan to handle any non-class content or health-related issues. And then to have a good audio video setting, your presence class after class, during class, you being able to start the class on time, that is 6 is 6 and not later. And most importantly, the availability of props and our understanding of your state of health. These are all things that are very important, that would help me deliver a class that is as useful to you as possible. Okay. I hope I've been able to be clear. And if you have any questions, I'll be unmuting all of you now. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. Some of you are still on mute, so you'll have to go individually and unmute yourself. And do ask any questions. And as many questions are there, I'm happy to answer. So please raise your hand one by one so that I can call out your names. I can see people who are asking questions and call out your names. You're from the ID Subramaniam and you're wearing a blue t-shirt, ma'am. You can go ahead and ask your question.
The props, right now we do not have props, any of the props. Like we have a mat and we have some cushion, so we don't have anything. So what about that?
So you will be, I don't know if you've already got, but you'll be getting an introduction email where I've announced some makeshift props. Let's say if you don't have belts, then I've said use a dupatta that most of you will have. And if I say, like, let's say, if you don't have Iyengar yoga blankets, then I've said use firm blankets. That is anything that is not, doesn't have a down filling or a cotton filling or a new cotton filling, which is a little firm. So we've given you makeshift props, but eventually any Iyengar yoga prop, let me just talk about the block. If you all know the blocks, now blocks come in various dimensions these days. But as far as an Iyengar yoga prop is concerned, the vertical, that is, it is 3D, right? So it's got a length, it's got a breadth, and it's got a height. That is, it's got a length, it's got a breadth, and it's got a height. The length, that is the top length of an Iyengar yoga. Let me just show you. So this is typically an Iyengar yoga block. So this is the height of the block, and this is the length from the top, and this is the width. This length of the block is exactly what you need to place as the dorsal. This exactly measures the length of the sacrum and tailbone. So when you use substitution props, you don't have these exact dimensions. So that way it becomes a little compromised. So we can make do with it for, let's say, a period of around 2 weeks, by which time I also would like you to try the classes out to make sure that this is something you genuinely would like to do. That is, this is a method you're really interested in. Once you realize that this is a method you genuinely would like to learn and this is something you're interested in, then I would like you to actually have a prop kit. Because a prop kit, let's say an Iyengar yoga chair, an Iyengar yoga rope, an Iyengar yoga block, all of these are actually not just prop structures, but they have huge, very pertinent anatomical relevance. So a rope has these many number of knots. You'll see a rope has either 4 or 5 entwinings. Now these are actually for the 4 fingers. So everything in Iyengar yoga has a logical meaning, which you'll not get in makeshift props. For the first 4 classes, we are okay with makeshift props. By then, if you're still interested in continuing long term, you must have your prop kit.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Gayatri Parthasarathi. I can't hear you, Gayatri.
I wanted to know how I can talk to you about the medical issues, whether I call you or send you a mail.
Yeah. So as far as medical issues are concerned, you will write to yogadeepam@gmail.com. After that, Yogadeepam will give you a few timing slots when you're available, because we get constant queries for discussing medical profiles. So we'll give you a few timing options from our side where we are available to take calls, and whichever time suits you within that, you please respond to which time you're picking amongst within that, and then we'll have a one-on-one call to discuss personal problems. And this should happen well before you enroll for classes. Actually, it's a very pertinent question, both of them. It's very important you do it before classes, because sometimes a general class is usually meant for people who are generally well, okay? But sometimes an ailment will be such that it really doesn't fall into the general class category. In which case, if you're already enrolled into general class, it may conflict your health profile. You may come into a pure therapeutic category. So it's very important you figure this out, and we have this discussion before you enroll into online classes. Yeah? Am I clear? So you'll have to write an email, and then subsequently we'll have a phone appointment to discuss one-on-one. Okay, Radhika?
After the class, in between, right? We're having class on Tuesday and then we're having class on Saturday. In between, are we supposed to be practicing anything? Do tell us, okay, do this or do that or anything?
No. So what happens is usually, like, let's say a child just learns to walk. I mean, some of you are coming in from a little bit of experience, but some of you have never tried Iyengar yoga before. So let's say a child just learns to walk. You initially take a few steps and then you fall. I mean, the child takes a few steps and then you fall. So usually when you're starting to learn asana, we are aiming to hit the spot and have you develop the right asana. But this is this is a progressive curve. You don't hit the right asana right at the start. So we are constantly grooming you towards developing a practice that is wholesome for you. Now, in that continuum, initially we are all still working towards a practice that is rich and correct for you. When a teacher sees that your practice is now building to something that is right for you, at that time the teacher will say, please go ahead and start practicing. But when you're still at a phase where it is still developing and you haven't hit the spot yet, then doing too much of a not so well developed practice or a not so safe practice might result in, you know, adverse effects. You may injure yourself if you don't know how exactly to work it. So you won't start with practicing. The teacher will come in and tell you, hey, go ahead and start off with this practice. Until that, you don't start. So this usually takes around a month and a half. Until that, you're doing Wednesday, Saturdays only.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Nandini.
Yeah, hi. My question was, I've never learned yoga before. Like, I'm absolutely new to it as such. So is it safe to begin with an online class, or would you recommend that I wait until you start offline classes?
See, actually, it's nice that you're coming in absolutely fresh, because that way I think we can take you through a journey that, you know, we are able to kind of show you very clearly. Now, see, as far as yoga is concerned, it really is not an impersonalized process. It works one-on-one and really only, one-on live and really only live, actually. But right now we are at a phase. Vaidhi, I'm getting a lot of feedback, so I'm just going to mute you for just a few minutes, because I'm getting feedback to what I'm saying myself. Okay. Yeah. So Iyengar yoga is actually a process which, not Iyengar yoga. Yoga itself is a highly personalized, a highly live practice. Okay. So by that, it is always preferable to be in front of a teacher. And why that is a teacher many times, for example, if something is going wrong with your mid back, you may not be able to put your hand at that mid back and make that correction. So a teacher then comes in and then physically manipulates you to make sure you're able to feel the right movement. And that is very important. Now, those factors are missing in an online class. So it is always better to do a live class. Okay. But the way we are structuring an online class is to make sure that these contingencies are taken in. So the way we have structured an online program is with a full realization that a person may not have props and may not be able to have the understanding or the means by which they may be able to make those nuanced corrections themselves. And so then we end up having a class by which it factors into all these constraints, and the class that we are giving you is still safe and whole to practice online. So it doesn't mean that we are diluting the content, but the approach that we are taking is still suitable for long distance teaching. Now, this doesn't happen forever. In some time, in the longest period, it's always good to come and study with a teacher. But right now, we are making sure that the online class will still give you a good takeaway and a safe practice.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? You can just speak up, because some of you, I'm not able to see you. You haven't put on your video. So if anybody else has any questions, you can please feel free to ask.
Ma'am, this is Jaya. I'm from Manav's
Jaya.
ID. That's my son's ID.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I just wanted to know, pranayama is supposed to be a very important aspect in yoga. So would we be introduced to the basics in pranayama or breathing before we get into asanas, or is it just going to be asana based?
Yeah. So as far as in Iyengar yoga's approach is concerned, I'm still going to be quoting Guruji here. So Guruji always, firstly in Patanjali's 8 limbs, asana comes first and then pranayama comes second. So in his tenets, he's never drawn a straight line where he's put asana and pranayama on the same pedestal. He's put asana first and then pranayama next. And actually Guruji has given a beautiful aphorism for this. He said, you should think of asana the way you're actually molding a pot. You have to think of asana as the way you're giving a shape to that pot. By that, asana actually readies your body. It makes sure that the lung, the respiratory system, the diaphragm, the intercostal muscle, the circulatory system, all parts of your body are first ready to receive a modified, a greater, a punctuated breath in any particular way. So here we are actually molding the system. And then pranayama is akin to that fire which bakes the pot. Then it is the, so if I were to actually use that pot without the pot being molded, then we are just going to squish it up. So the structure is created by asana, and then we introduce pranayama. Very many times you will see the way you breathe when you're lying down is not the same way you breathe when you're running, right? So the activity itself asks for a modified breath. Now this happens in asana. The way the breath functions when you're doing trikonasana is not the same way the breath functions when you're doing kukutasana, is not the same way the breath functions when you're doing Setubandha Sarvangasana. So unconsciously, your breath is manifesting various mechanisms in the process of asana itself. And that's a very independent, a very unregulated, that is, we are not imposing the breath in certain ways. The breath has a chance to explore these various means. We must provide that in a good practice of asana first, and then subsequently we will introduce pranayama. But in my classes, I don't introduce pranayama at least until 9 months to 1 year of practicing asana.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, anything else? You can just speak up, because some of you are not able to see your videos. So you can just speak up and ask, mention your name and ask questions, please.
Ma'am, this is Sudhir.
Sudhir, okay. I can't see you, but yeah.
Okay. How much floor area, clear floor area do we need at our home?
Okay. So again, I mean, these are really nice questions. The reason is they're very pertinent, actually. See, one is we don't have props, right? All of us, that is, we don't have an entire, whereas if I say you need a rope wall, you may not have an entire rope wall available. So we don't have the entire gamut of props with us. So I will be using things around the house. That is, the wall at your house matters. The edge of two walls, where you have one wall and the other wall meet, we may use the edge of two walls. And then we may use a window grill. I may ask you to tie a cloth on a window grill, of course, if your window grill is firm and weight bearing. So by this, you will need to have, let's say, 2 mat space. That is one thing. Okay, 2 mat space. Suppose I put 1 mat horizontal and 1 mat vertical, like this. If I put, and I drew a circle around this. So if I had 1 mat horizontal and 1 mat vertical, and I drew a circle connecting these diagonals or connecting these diameters, then you will need that space. But more importantly, space in an online class is defined by how your camera setting is. If the space is very less, then your camera is not going to have enough depth or height to be able to capture you. So based on this crisscross, that is a cross mat setting, and availability of a window grill, wall edge, and a wall itself, and the ability of a camera to capture you is your definition of space. I know it's a little hazy here, but it's really upon us to be able to figure out. So you need to be able to have Vaidi or Niran, can you actually quantify this in terms of how much space in terms of,
I can
square footage?
Sorry, you want me to move my camera and show you the space, and we can actually see if that is something that's working for everybody or something? I mean, otherwise.
I mean, you can do that, of course. No, we'd be able to do that. But I said, again, these 2 points also matter. That is, we need a wall space, edge of a wall, and preferably a window grill. Now, Radhika, I don't know if you have a window grill.
No, I don't have a window grill.
You don't have a window grill. So these are the things that we'll have to then figure out. But then if you don't have a window grill, then you will need to have let me show you. There, you need to have a door that can be firmly closed.
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah, so these are the things that we'll figure out. You basically need to have the constituents of a room, that is free floor space, A floor space, as I told you, a crisscross maths depth, a floor space, a wall space, edge of a wall space, and a window grill, absolutely preferable. If it's not there, then a door. A door that you can close and make sure it closes and won't fall on you. Yeah. Yes, Swaminathan, yes.
Do you have any dietary restrictions to follow during the class, or you have to wait for an hour to take the food, or before the class?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you've had a very light beverage, see again, each person's, the way the digestive system fires up is very different. But if you've had just a small beverage, like let's say we are starting the class at 6 o'clock in the morning. So by 5:30, 5:15, you should have been done with a small beverage. 5:15, you should have been done with a small beverage. But again, it depends on your individual digestive system. But obviously, fortunately, we are having a class at that time where I don't think we can load ourselves with a meal. So far, we are safe there. But if you are going to practice later on, you must give yourself a solid 3 hours after a meal and before practice. Things like pranayama, ujjayi, etc., we can do it earlier after a meal, but that will come to later. For now, between a meal and a practice, a solid meal and a practice, 3 hours, between a light beverage. By beverage, I don't mean a ton of milk. I mean a light beverage and class. You can have, let's say, a 45-minute gap.
Excuse me, ma'am. This is Meeta Singhal.
Yes. Yes, Meeta, hi.
Hi, ma'am. Actually, ma'am, I wanted to know ki, like I have some back pain issues. So would it be possible for me to continue with the class?
So as I said, if you have any of these issues, you'll have to first write to yogadeepam@gmail.com. Now, it's not about, don't write a general email like this saying that, sometime I get sprains.
Yeah.
That would actually give us no lead. What you'd actually, if you have, let's say, back pain and it has a case history, for example, because of a disc desiccation or a disc prolapse or stenosis, or if you have a condition, then definitely state your condition, attach your medical reports. By that, I mean, images you may not be able to attach, but you could take a photo of that image. Let's say if you have an MRI, you could keep it under light and take a snap. So attach your images, attach your medical reports and write an email. And then we'll get back to you to yogadeepam@gmail.com, and we'll get back to you with various timings. Let's say on Monday, Friday, Saturday, between 5 and 6, we'll be available. Choose one of those timings which is applicable to you. And then we must have a one-on-one discussion before the class to see if a general class at all is suitable for you, or in addition to a general class. That is, you can do a general class, but you'll also need a supportive practice. So you have categories where a general class may not be applicable at all. But there may also be categories cases where a general class is applicable, provided you have a supportive practice. Many times it may also mean that that supportive practice must be given to you ahead of a general class. Let's say you have back pain, then I'll teach you a few poses that you need to do, or a few therapeutic actions that you need to do ahead of joining a general class. Then it all must be done before enrollment. So it's very important that you make an email contact and establish and clear out your medical history to start with.
Thank you.
That's a very important premise. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Vivek? I can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Now you can hear me?
Morning. Yes, very well.
I have been doing yoga from so many years actually, but only last year, since almost 1 year, I have been doing yoga with Nivedita ji. And I am at level 1. But in order to learn more, I would like to attend some of your workshops which may not be for beginners, but slightly level 1 level.
Okay. See, Nivedita is also an Iyengar yoga teacher, obviously, and wonderful teacher as well. See, actually, I don't know. There are different descriptions of what a level 1 entails. So at this point, when you say level 1, I'm not able to exactly figure out what your practices, what you've covered, etc. You're more than welcome to try out the workshops as well. But I would really suggest a way by which, so as I said, we are all Iyengar yoga teachers, but each teacher has an individual way of expressing themselves. So the language that I may use to express myself to deliver an asana may be different from another teacher, though all of us are getting to the same point. Yeah, but the pathway that we use to describe, the words that we use to elaborate on that or express that particular action may be different, though our pathways are all Iyengar yoga. So by that, if I'm able to see your practice in both a beginner's class and an experienced beginner's class, that is an intermediate class, I'll be able to see what your practice is and guide you accordingly. By talking, I'm not able to kind of judge your practice. Only by doing and watching you in class, I can judge your practice. So from that point of view, I'd be able to guide you as to, within the gamut of our classes at Iyengar Yoga Deepam, which class will be most suitable for you.
Namaste, ma'am. I'm Vijay Lakshmi.
One sec, Vijay Lakshmi. Just 1 minute. I'm not sure if Vivek is completely, if he has any additional questions.
Yeah, so what you are suggesting me to join beginner's class and then progress?
See, at this point of time, I don't know what your practice is, right? So there are people who, for example, they've done several years of Iyengar yoga and then they've taken a break and then they're not doing Iyengar yoga now. So these people have had a practice of Iyengar yoga. So they may be able to pick up a little more quickly because they are coming back to a system, right? So I'm not really sure just by speaking what level ones, that is what all you've covered in level 1 and what your current practice within the level 1 is. See, by that I mean that we may have, for example, in our beginners classes, in our live classes, there are students who have joined beginners class and this may be the first month. There are also students who've done 5 or 6 rounds of beginners level classes and this is their 7th round of doing a beginners class, because for them a beginner's class is ideal to practice for their health condition, but this is not their first time. They may have done 5-6 months of practice repeatedly 5 times. And they may also be students in the beginner's classes for whom it is their first class, first time. So a person here is experienced, a person here is inexperienced, but both of them have been advised beginners classes because of their condition. That way, when you say level 1, I still am not able to decipher at level 1 what your current juncture of practice is. That I will know only by seeing you. So I would suggest that you join the beginners classes, and if your practice at such a level that I feel that a workshop may be beneficial to you, then I'll talk to Mr. Vaidyanathan and you can be shifted accordingly. But really at the time of enrollment, it is good to enroll into a beginner's class because the stronger the foundation is, the more beneficial it's always going to be for you. But if it can be bolstered by a workshop, we'll definitely notify you of that as well. See, this question I'm not able to handle or answer completely because I'm not able to see your practice. We are just verbalizing now. I'd be able to talk to you more about that only after I see you in a class session so that I can advise you more about what or which class will be beneficial for you. Am I making sense?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Vijay?
Ma'am, I would like to know if we can have some trial classes or we have to go ahead with all the 8 classes because I thought, will it be possible for you to give 1 or 2 trial classes?
See, usually when we are starting a class, as I told you, there are a series of classes. See, Vijay, I would suggest an online class. If you would like to figure out, or you're still trying to see if the class is something which you want to do long term, I suggest you observe a class. Okay, because when we are talking about an online class, when it's a live class, I'm actually calling you to a studio. I have all the props with me. I'm providing all the props for practice. I have all your case histories and I am there in person with a bunch of assistant teachers as well to make physical manipulations, corrections, everything. In a live class, we are dealing with several variables. Each one of you are operating from your houses with your condition, with whatever is available to you to start with. So there are many variables. So here, the only non-variable is you actually being admitted into class. That is a non-variable here. But if you want to make that also a variable, then I suggest that you observe classes to see if this is what you'd like to do, and then enroll. You can observe up to 1 or 2 classes and then you enroll. But once you're enrolled, you're not testing a class doing it. You can watch a class, which I still don't encourage. You can try out a class by observing it. But for those who are actually enrolled, so that I can concentrate on people who are enrolled and really look at their structures and guide them in the best way I can, I would like, once you're in class, you're in class. If you'd like to try it, you can observe it by watching it.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome. Radhika, yes, you had a question? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, so it's going to be you and the other 2 assistants who are going to be in the class, or is it you will take turns teaching?
Online class, we don't need assistants, right? Because nobody's there to kind of turn and twist you. So when it's an online class, if it's my class, which is a Saturday class, I will be the one that's instructing you. The Wednesday class, it could be one of the 3 of us. Now, I'd like to enforce and reinforce that Niran and Parimla, both of them are actually completely groomed by me. By that, we are actually having so in a beginner's class, we are hoping to cover a basic list of asanas and a basic list of actions. For example, let's say I'm talking about, Trikonasana. Then I expect the spine to be a certain way, the chest to be a certain way, the shoulders to be, basically we have certain points of penetration. Now, this is a common understanding for all us teachers. And this is a pathway that has been etched out now for years together. So we all have a very seamless understanding of what has been taught class after class, okay? And if I'm noticing something, like let's say, I say, hey, let's say for Vaidhi, I'm saying the right hand is completely dropping, and Niran is teaching, or Parimla is teaching the next class, then I'll say, watch out for that person, this problem is there. So these adjustments need to be made in your next class. So, and if he notices, let's say, or Parimla notices for the next class, for this person, they have an ankle swelling and they've not been able to put weight on that ankle, she or he will call me and say that I've noticed this for this person. This is what I gave. This is my observation. So I take it on from there. So it's a highly communicated network. Okay. So the classes, when it moves from one person to another person, don't be worried. The content of the class and the vision with which we're coming to the class is very seamless.
Ma'am, I have one more question. Smita here.
Who's this? Yeah, Smita.
Ma'am, will we get some recorded videos or something for further practice?
For now, you won't be practicing, right? To start with, see, what happens is when a person is starting out, even if you've done yoga for many years, every school of yoga has its own approach. And in that, Iyengar yoga has a very methodical approach. So very many times you'll realize that in class, when we're doing a class, when I say, let's say, roll the shoulder back, it's a very simple, and I'm going to do it for you so that you can understand. I say roll the shoulder back. It's a very standard instruction. On the right shoulder, I'm widening my collarbone and then rolling my shoulder back. 1 minute. Okay. On the right side, I'm widening my collarbone and then rolling my shoulder back. On the left side, I'm just rolling my shoulder back. You see 2 different shoulders here?
Yes.
You see 2 different shoulders here? This is a wide shoulder. It takes care of the joint, whereas this is a crushing shoulder and it shortens the entire joint. Now, how you decipher roll the shoulder back could be these 2 very different expressions. One is good, one is harmful. So for the first initial period, a student may not be, they would think that they are following the instructions. I've rolled my shoulder back, so I followed the instructions. But the fact that it is not the right rolling of the shoulder back is something that the teacher is actually making you see. Then we'll say, do you notice when I'm rolling my shoulder back, I'm still maintaining the extension of the side of my neck and my trapezius is released. Whereas when you're rolling your shoulder back, do you see you're crushing your shoulder? So these are the things we bring to your notice. Now, if you very quickly go to your practice without realizing these mistakes, you'll add up with a wrong practice. Okay. So initially, we don't want you to practice. And even if I give videos, that roll the shoulder back may be deciphered by you in any way, in a right way or a wrong way. So initially, we are not going with anything apart from a teacher viewing a student session. That is the only thing we are going with. Later on, how to guide you in your practice and how to bolster your practice will come at a later stage once you're settling into the right rhythm of practice. That does not come now. So initially, no recordings, nothing except what happens in an online interactive session. And we're very particular about that. We want to make sure that the practice you have is something that is rich and good for yourself.
Pavitra, go ahead with your
I have a question.
Who?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't see the person. Vaidi, you're able to see everybody on one screen?
Yes, that's
you
what.
can then
That's
call
why I
out the
said.
name. Yeah, please.
Yeah,
You
Pavitra,
can
go
then...
ahead with your question.
Thank you.
Pavitra has a
Yes,
question.
so my question is, there are times when, due to work reasons, I have to stay up late, which means I get to sleep only around 2 o'clock in the night or 3 in the night. And then during the day, I compensate for this on those particular days. So in that case, is it still okay for the body to get up at 5:30, go through the yoga, and then, compensate later in the day? Is it acceptable?
See, actually, irrespective of whether you're doing a yoga class or not, it is not okay.
I understand.
Okay. It's not okay. So actually, your body definitely needs its own recovery. In Iyengar Yoga, we lay a lot of emphasis for a restorative practice. A restorative practice involves those positions which helps you restore, not just in any form and way, but in structured positions which actually help you completely restore. It actually is a very rejuvenating practice. Why I'm saying that is we actually lay special emphasis on restoration. Now, one of the basic normal mechanisms to allow that to happen is sleep. Now, if you don't have sleep, it's really going to be difficult for you to participate in classes, because you may find as classes progress, we don't start with a straight on bullet intensity, but as classes progress, we are adding more and more and more elements into it, which requires two things: physical focus and mental focus. Both of that becomes very challenging if you're sleep deprived. So if you are not able to have a kind of a rested entrance into your class, it may be difficult for you to actually go through the class itself over time. So you can actually push yourself through class and somehow get it done. But that's not the advice. Coming from a point where we are hoping that this class does good for you, that is, it helps you with your life, with your lifestyle, we can only recommend that which is best for you. It is good to come into a class when you're rested and restored. But if you're actually not rested and if you've had very rough nights, it may not add up to you having a practice that honors your current state of health or state of being. Am I being clear?
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else?
Ma'am, if I had understood it correctly, like you kind of suggested that, in the long run, or at least, once in a while, it is good to have a live class, assuming the situation gets better. So if that were to happen for those of us who are in different cities, how could that happen?
See, at this point of time, we are starting with an online class at this time is as new to you as it is to me as well. So at this point, we are starting an online class with an intention of being able to give you as much as possible, as much as can be done within an online setting. Now, we've actually already tried it out within hours. So your students, the ones who I'm currently interacting with today, are students who are currently outside Iyengar Yogadipam. With Iyengar Yogadipam students, we've now had 2 to 2.5 months. Am I right, Vaidi? 2 to 2.5 months of straight classes where we've been doing it. Actually, the classes have been very successful, in the sense very satisfying for both the teachers and students. Why I'm saying it is, even for a teacher, we need to walk out of class feeling that we've done something that is beneficial for the student community. We have to have a feel good takeaway. That is, today I've come to class and I've been able to make a positive change to students who have attended classes. Now, this is a very honest feedback that a teacher needs to have to take away. Even when a teacher finishes class, it's not about finishing a 1 hour class. It's really being able to deliver something concrete to a student. Now, that being the case, in the last 2 months of classes, we as teachers with a group of students have been able to establish that. We have been able to establish the fact that every student gets a takeaway and the class is being beneficial, both for a teacher and both for a student, in being able to move together symbiotically. We've been able to establish that. Now, in the longer run, definitely you would need, it is advisable to study live with a teacher, but because the entire system is so new, all the Zoom has happened in such a short while, that is still a long-term question, which will probably arise after maybe 3 to 6 months of practice, 6 months. So at that point, hopefully I'd be able to have an answer that satisfies your question. At this junction, how we are able to facilitate a live class, hopefully we should be able to offer a workshop kind of a system where you're able to come in. I'm not sure at this point. For now, that is still a long-term question, which I'm hoping to work out, for which your feedback is always very helpful.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think you need to introduce. Yeah. Go ahead, Radhika. Go ahead.
My question is, you had asked us to write to the Gmail address if we have any illnesses or anything like that.
Yes.
In my case, God willing, I don't have any illnesses, but because of repetitive movements of certain type, I have a weak knee or a little. So is that something also that needs to be communicated?
Yeah, actually everything. See, Radhika, what happens is, let me even state my personal case. I used to be a Kalaripayattu practitioner for a long back, and I've had some back injuries. So actually yoga has nurtured me completely. Now I'm not talking about it because I'm an Iyengar yoga teacher, but this has factually happened to me. So what happens is, usually in the initial case of, so where I may come into a class having been completely recovered from an old injury, but sometimes because an injury is still has impacted an area, it will still, there are days, even for example on a daily basis, let's say even for you, there may be some movements which remind you of a problem, that the knee will say, hey, I'm there. Okay. And this happens everywhere. The problem areas will still show you a kind of a hint at you, saying that, hey, I'm still resident, don't forget me, I'm still there. Okay. So it's very important for you to tell this ahead of time, so that we are conscious that this person has this, and so we are going to deliver instructions that takes into consideration the on and off happening of these events. So it still is going to be a practice that it takes into consideration. For example, I have a student with a sacroiliac problem. Predominantly yoga has completely, that is every day he has a very, how do I say, a very dutiful, a very regular practice of yoga, and it always keeps him going. Some days, let's say if he's ridden a bike, the next day there is a flare up. So immediately he will get in touch with me and say, ma'am, I've had a flare up because I had very long hours on a bike yesterday. Then my practice that particular day, if let's say if it has a very long duration of Setubandha Sarvangasana, it actually adds gravitational pressure on the sacroilium. Then at that day, my sequence may have Setubandha Sarvangasana on it. But I'll say, hey, please don't do Setubandha Sarvangasana for today. I would like you to go to Ardha Halasana with your legs in Supta Konasana. I may say that to him. So that then that honors his condition for that day and has in mind his long-term problem of a sacroiliac issue. Okay, so if you've had any problem that's either active, dormant, or historic, you still need to state all that.
Okay, so then the communication has to be constant.
Constant. No, it's like between mother and child. It's constant.
Okay, so it's just not one time you email and then you have a call. Let's say during the
actually, frankly, Radhika, we in our IYD community, we are not people who actually operate classes or drive after huge numbers. But definitely, the practice has a very close association. The teacher is in touch with each student. The teacher is very aware of each student's everyday condition, and there is it's a very close-knit group actually, and that is the way I'd like to take it as well. Yes, I forgot your name, madam. Subramaniam ID.
Yeah, my name is Malti.
Malti, yeah.
Yeah, namaste. I want to know what would be the size of our class. It will be like 10, 12 or how many people are there in one batch?
See, as far as online classes are considered, so in a live class, we usually keep it at around 15 to 20. Okay. But we keep it at 15 to 20 because in a live class, we're actually running around making physical adjustments. If somebody's shoulder is not tractioning down, we'll put a rope and pull it down. If somebody's, dorsal is not moving in, we'll put a fist and push it in. If somebody's shoulder is not rolling back, we'll put a hand and roll it back. All these things happen. But in a live class, there is no scope for physical adjustment. Okay. But there is a way by which we're actually seeing at you, engaging you, at us being able to look at in what way we can improve. So because there is no physical adjustment here, the capacity of live classes online classes is larger than live classes. Anything else?
I think you need to introduce Parimala, and then after that, perhaps.
Yes, Parimala was not there initially because she had some login problems. Let me show you our other star teacher. So this is Miss Parimala Parthasarathy, and she's also been a long-term student. She's been with the institute right from the start as well. So Parimala, and let me show you.
Swagatam to all of you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'll show you Niran once again. He is the other teacher. And then let me show you Vaidi once again, because actually he's the star admin. You'll realize that you go to him much more than you go to any one of us. So this is Vaidi again. So, and me, I've been talking nonstop for some time now. So this is the team that will be helping you with your classes. Anything else? Any other questions? I'm actually not able to see all of you on one screen. So if you are actually on with your mute video off, and if you still have any questions, please go ahead and speak up so that you don't need to wait for me to ask you.
Yeah, go ahead, Shankar.
Yeah, recommendation on the attire for the class.
Yeah, so we actually have, so Vaidi, just quickly asking, have you already sent the class annexure?
No, once after this, after this session is over, you will be getting, detailed instructions, the general information about the class, the attire and everything. So that will be a, kind of a 1-page or a 2-page document that will have what you should do, what you should wear, and then, do's and don'ts, and also the audio video setting, etc. So it'll cover everything, whatever you need to know for attending the class.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So let me just add on. So in the orientation class, we wanted to actually give a platform for you to meet us, for us to meet you, and for us to be oriented to ourselves and the system. Okay. But still, this is not an enrollment or admission yet. So we basically wanted to facilitate a platform whereby we could cross-communicate, clarify our questions. I could tell you what I'm going to kind of present in the series. We are going to present in the series. You could come ahead and ask questions. So after this, whatever is necessary for admissions, whether it's, the attire, the rules for the class, what we expect in terms of audio, video settings, for all this, Mr. Vaidyanathan will send you a detailed, write-up as to what these are. So that will happen after the orientation. Anything else?
Ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, Jaya. Ma'am, like in a couple of months, if God willing things get better and we are able to continue in a live class, will the transition be easy from online to live?
See, actually, I'm not able to say 100% how things transition. Okay, because right now the situation of Corona has been so sudden that even for us the lockdown was just one fine day, just like it was everywhere else. It was just one fine day. So that way, how live classes will start, how we are going to transition from online to live classes, who is going to come to, because live classes usually the number of participants is lesser. So how all that is going to happen is still too early. So for us, once we get going, see, ultimately, I always hope that through teaching classes, we are able to give people as much of benefit as possible. Usually also, let me say, in a class, we are really expecting a teacher to be tuned in with a student and a student to be absolutely tuned in with the teacher so that we can travel in parallel. So the fact that we are looking at a student to benefit from the classes is ultimate, okay? Or we are looking at the student's welfare is ultimate. But how we are going to carve the pathway from online to live to online, still something that is in development. Hopefully over time, once the situations becomes clearer, we are going to have right now we still haven't had a go sign for opening our classes live. So once we are clear about that, I think the pathway also should reveal itself better.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Anything else? Vaidi, you're seeing anybody?
No, I think we can wrap. It's, more than an hour, I guess. Any questions you can always post in the group. So
now that you're all familiar with how the entire group operates, if any of you have questions that are administrative, it goes to yogadeepam@gmail.com. If any of the questions are therapeutic or health related, it still goes to yogadeepam@gmail.com only, except that we are hoping to have a one-on-one discussion based on mutually suitable timings after that. Yes, clear? Okay, so we'll wrap today up then. Thank you very much for coming and glad to meet you all. And thank you again, Niran, Parimla, Vaidi, and all of you for being present today. I hope the session was beneficial. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.